It's like everyone's doing seltzers, and we're like, all right, fine, we'll do a seltzer, but we're going to use real fruit purees, and we're going to make it like a mimosa. We called it a smoothie style seltzer, which like, yeah, tongue in cheek. We're like, we're making a smoothie style seltzer and we'll see how it goes. Number one requested back product. Like people freaked out about it. We got a good 2-3 dozen phone calls the week after it's gone. It was like, when's it coming back?
Yeah.
You have to brew this again. It's still our fastest selling product. Well, it's our number one seller in our tap room and has been pretty much since Garden Party 2020, 30-40% above second place. So it's like a high first place, and it's just like not going anywhere. Yeah.
Leo here, your host of the Building Bellingham podcast, and thanks for stopping by the studio. Pour a glass of whiskey or local beer, take a sip, kick those feet up. We're going to dive into what it means to be a business owner, what it means to be a member of this Bellingham and Whatcom County community, and what it means to find peace and balance while running a badass, high-octane, local, iconic business. Let's jump in.
Cheers.
Jason, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
For those of you that are listening, we got Jason Harper, the co-owner. You own this with your wife.
We own it together.
So Stemma Brewing here in Bellingham, and you're located just right off of Iowa Street there. Really unique, cool location.
Thank you.
Yeah,
According to our most recent Google review, it's a terrible location.
Oh,
so I'm just
you should change it because one person said something.
So it's no longer a good location, terrible location.
Oh, was it?
It's by the freeway.
Was it inconvenient, or was it because the freeway noise was?
I don't know. All they said was good beer, terrible location.
They can just buy it online now, right? Or they can just order it.
That's
and
right.
Get it in another store.
Yeah,
you'll still support the business, right?
I love the location.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, it's right off the freeway. It's
Yeah.
the local shortcut to hardware sales.
Yep.
We have a freeway sign, which is sweet.
I see it every time I drive home. From north.
Yeah, and it's got a kitty on it.
First of all, let's dive into the cat. Okay, because you and I, like when we first met, we met through Jesse Nelson at Overflow Taps.
Absolutely.
He said you got to meet Jason, and we started. You and I talked. We got talking about this whole cat and branding and what did that like? Where did the cat come from, and why are there cats at the brewery?
Yep, absolutely. So Stemma, the word, it's a Latin term for a written family genealogy. It took us a long time to come up with the name, but we knew we wanted a name that kind of embodied family culture, values. Yep. Kim and I started the business. My mom and dad moved up from Portland to help us run it. And my kids are 6 and 4 and they're running around, they're involved. And so it's very much, and our staff are like family to us. So we wanted this family brand and we were like, okay, that's for us. We've always had cats. So having a cat as part of the logo is important to us. Also, I feel like just on branding, it's really nice to have an icon that's separate to your name as a branding piece. And so you have this standalone. It doesn't say Stemma, but at this point, anyone in the beer world in Bellingham should know that cat and they should see it and go, that's Stemma. Yeah. Same, Aslan does a really good job with the lion.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the long answer to why we have a cat. And then we've had cats at the brewery. Yeah. We don't have any right now. They are challenging with friendly cats than keeping them where we want them and not going over and running on the bar. And the dogs but we love them in the warehouse. And we've been working with the Whatcom Humane Society with what they call the feral cat program, where they actually place feral cats as like pest control in the warehouse. Yep. And that we've had some success, some not. They tend to want to run away, but we're trying our best with that.
Stay here.
Like, come on, I'm
everywhere.
Yeah, I'm feeding you.
Yeah,
it's good.
Like they're inside the place. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to hunt besides here.
Yeah. They unfortunately, that's part of being in a warehouse environment and having grain around, but we do our best to mitigate that.
Yeah,
cats help.
Yeah, love it. You said something that's really interesting for our listeners and for other business owners. There's this like interesting pairing of a visual image on a brand and then the name and what it represents. Yeah. How did you decide to separate those things? Like, what was the importance of the face of the cat and then the name and then having, the stylus and all of that? What's the importance of that when you're establishing a brand?
I think you want something to go beyond just the name, because I think that helps people connect to the brand. I think it helps it stand alone more. For us, when we're looking at, we have a very specific color scheme and we work on making those colors really well known and out there, and everything we do, we try to stay in this kind of color scheme. And then we're particular about our font. We have a certain font that we only use for some of stuff. And then we have our, our name brand and our cats. And
it's not Times New Roman, is it?
No,
okay.
Not Times New
Just
Roman.
wanted to
No, that would be nice. Maybe typewriter.
Aria?
Yeah.
Little sans serif.
Like Jokester. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Ransom was a Ransom font. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And then the cat is just nice. Having that standalone brand is really, or that standalone icon is nice. I looked at a lot of brands I really respected and loved, and every single one had some sort of standalone icon. You think of New Belgium and you just think of a fat tire bike, and Orval is a Trappist monastery brewery in Belgium, and they have this like jumping fish, and it's like iconic. And I think that those images last longer than a name. They stick out in your mind more.
Right. The name is spoken, and the obviously the image is internalized. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You started about 9 months before COVID hit, and you started this business with your wife, and you guys said, we can do this together. I don't know if my wife would tolerate working with me, but I have a lot of respect for you for doing that, for jumping into that. But tell me about the conversations around leading up to this. You had been in the beverage distribution world, right?
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that path, and then the conversation that led to let's do this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially if you weren't close to us and just kind of outside looking in, it seemed like we sort of popped up. And there was a quote I heard at some point, I think it was on a billboard, and I love it's every overnight success is years in the making.
Right.
And I think that is our story of, it looks like we just popped up and here we are. But Kim and I have been talking about it for close to 10 years by the time we opened the doors. And we're seriously planning it for, 5 or 6 of those years and just talking about it for the others. So it was very much the original business plan was written in 2011 out on Western's campus for one of my, I was an entrepreneur or finance class. One of the 400 level business classes was writing a business plan. So I had a partner for that, and we wrote it on starting a brewery. And at the time we called it Fan Belt Brewery for car related sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then, honestly, the bones of that business plan is what we used for Stemma. There was a lot of really good of meat there. And then we sat on that. I was graduating in 2011 going, I'm starting a brewery. And this was at the time, it was Boundary Bay and Chucknut.
Yeah.
Colshan opened either ended 11 or early 2012. So Colshan was in planning, but we wanted to do it. And my wife, or soon to be wife at that time, she reminded me we had really no money and no experience. Yeah. She is much smarter than me. That's part of why we work well together.
Yeah. You got the friendly reminder.
Yeah. It's like, it's not going to really work. So that's where I was working at Starbucks at the time, but ended up connecting through writing that business plan with Dickerson Distributors locally. Yep. About 8 months after graduation, they hired me on as a salesperson.
Yeah. What did sales for a beverage distributor look like?
Totally. Well, first off, as a 22-year-old going to sales, like that was an awesome opportunity. Yeah. That doesn't happen very often. I think a lot of it was my passion. I think that got me there. It's like, hey, we know this guy really enjoys the industry and is like ready to work. So that was a cool opportunity to be given where I was originally in Skagit County, but I have anywhere between 16 and 20 some accounts every day between grocery store, restaurants, and convenience.
And that's all Whatcom and Skagit County?
Yeah. Okay. Dickerson's all Whatcom and Skagit. I was doing specifically Skagit when I first started. And then I had a couple of routes. I ended up finishing up in Bellingham. But so I would leave the house at 7 a.m. and go to a convenience store and check backstock, write an order. And, at the time I was selling Rockstar was a big brand. And then also Four Loko.
Yeah,
and then
like 4 of those
bunch of craft. Yeah, exactly. And then a bunch of craft beer.
Like you need to quarter your day out with Four Lokos.
Yeah, totally. That helps. Yeah. And then with Rockstar, since they took the caffeine away, just add in the Rockstar.
Exactly.
But so I was doing sales, and you just pop around account to account. The sweet thing about being in distribution and in sales is you're walking into a restaurant and you're going into the kitchen and you're talking to the cook about how their day's going. And then you talk to the buyer and they talk about beer for 20 minutes and you sell them some kegs. And by the time I did 8 years of that between the different routes, I knew a couple hundred business owners around the area. And I knew what beers were selling and what didn't and how they were running businesses. And it was a really cool insight. I mean, similar to what you're doing here, right? Yeah. You meet with people and you gather info. I was able to gather all this info from all these other bars, restaurants, convenience stores.
My crash course MBA right
Yep.
Here. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to learn. Yeah. And then also on, I was selling for brands like Rubens and Freem and, 21st Amendment. And over the course of working there, we get the opportunity to go visit the breweries and do behind the scenes tours and an
You
opportunity.
probably hated getting that inside scoop and going on these tours and free beer and all
Yeah.
this stuff.
No, yeah,
Probably brutal.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, when people complain about it, they're in the wrong industry. It's really fun.
From what I understand about the distribution world, it's got this chokehold. It's like it's a bottleneck, right?
Mhm.
Of, maybe one or two or three different local or regional or national distributors,
Yep.
right? So you're going through this sales position. You're having sounds like a great time,
Yep.
and you're starting to learn more and more about the way this industry works. Like, what were some of the pain points you saw for breweries? Maybe this idea is still cooking in your mind, and you're going, "Ooh, wow, this is tougher than I thought it would be," or maybe you're looking at it and going, "Oh, I see a clear path. I see the route." What was going through your mind as a salesperson at 22?
Now having that background in distribution has been really helpful, and it has allowed me to sort of know the good and the bad and how you navigate, because I do think distribution for most breweries is a really abstract concept, and there's not a ton of education around it. I mean, a lot of breweries start out and they're like, I'm going to brew beer, and they either come from home brewing or they're brewing somewhere else. And most breweries start as I can brew good beer. Yeah. And they don't really, artist, right? Yeah. Yep. And that's, that's a great spot to be at, but they don't understand necessarily the sales side of it. And they don't understand the distribution piece, which at the end of the day, you have to sell the beer. So, I would argue it's almost better to come from the opposite angle of like, hey, if you can sell it, let's figure out how to make it.
Backfill good.
Yep. Yeah. And that can be hard too. There's challenges, but so it definitely seeing the inner workings of distribution, understanding good, bad, and the ugly, because it's an industry, and it's very relationship based. And so you're up against, trying to get in somewhere, and they're like, well, I buy from this person, or I do this, and that's all good, but it's like figuring out how to navigate those challenges and still sell beer, because it's not as simple as just like, hey, you like my beer, like let's bring it in.
Because there's lots of beer.
There's a lot of good beer.
Good beer.
There's also just like the logistics, right? Like, okay, I really like your beer, I want to sell it, but I don't really want to add like another person delivering, and I can only take deliveries X amount of days, and so it's just like,
broke, don't fix it. Like,
all that logistics make it really hard. And so that's where knowing, the different distribution relationships and knowing who works with who is helpful.
Yeah. So you did this for, you said 7 years?
Yeah, just under 8. It was like 7 years, 10 months or something.
How many months? How many months is that? Like, if we're talking like babies.
Right. That's right.
How many? Get ready for baby.
We're ready. That's
right.
Yeah. That's way past the time you would use months. Yeah. 92 months.
Good math.
Yeah.
Good quick math.
If you're still after 2, you can't do months. You can't get like 26 months.
No,
not for babies.
No, they're 3.5. And then they have to like say that they're older than they are, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the cool thing is like, I'm 3.5, right?
Oh yeah. You go to the round up, the half though.
You have to do that.
At a certain point, you gotta.
You can fudge it a little bit. You can be like 3.25 and say you're 3.5.
Yeah.
And that's all good.
That's why I say 8, because 7 years doesn't sound as good.
No,
so
7 years,
just under 8.
It's just not reputable enough. 7 years. No, it's okay. So you're 7 years in. Tell me a little bit about the progression, like what you were learning, where your mind was. This business idea, this business plan had been written. Then you go into this industry, and this is like crash course, amazing learning opportunity.
Absolutely.
And obviously the thing's still brewing, if you will, right?
Yeah, that's good.
That was corny. I'm working on my dad jokes. I'll drink to that. Cheers. Yeah.
For us.
It's bad.
In my interview getting hired at Dickerson, I told them my long-term goal is I wanted to start a brewery. So, that was always long-term goal, always brewing. I would say probably 3 or 4 years in, I loved working there. And at that point, I think I didn't totally abandon, but I was like, I'm probably here long term. Like, this is a really cool opportunity. I'm really enjoying what I do. And then I started training the Dickerson crew on beer education. And while doing that, I was continuing my own beer education through a program called Cicerone. Cicerone.org. It's the sommelier, or it's the rebuttal to the sommelier program. So sommelier is for wine, is Cicerone to beer. And so they have, at the time, it was a 3-level program. It's now 4 levels. And so I got the certified beer server, which is an online 60-question exam. Basically, just make sure you know the gist of beer and beer styles. And
you
then
nailed it 60 out of 60.
No, I don't think. I don't know, 54 maybe.
Oh
Like
man, you
no,
got 6 questions.
I
Come
know.
on.
That's
God.
it. I'm more about passing. I don't really, as long as you're over passing.
You have higher standards than I do, by the way.
After that, I ran a 5-week course with our salespeople at Dickerson on beer styles and beer tasting and off flavors. And it's really beneficial if distributors are well known in that because they can go and sell to accounts and really just talk about flavor profiles. And then I ended up going with one other guy from Dickerson, and we took the certified Cicerone exam, which is a 3-hour basically SAT style exam. So in person, written exam with tasting, and we both passed that, which out of I think there's 25 people that took that. There was only, I think, 6 that passed.
Wow.
And we are 2.
It's a tight filter.
Exactly. Yeah. It's our hard exam.
Yeah.
And so that was awesome. And then from there, the next level is Master Cicerone. And at the time, it was a lottery to take that exam. I put my name in and didn't hear back. And then someone dropped out and I got like a phone call like, hey, if you want to take, it's in 6 months from now and you have a spot, and it's an expensive exam. And so I was able to get that, ticket to take that. And,
that's awesome.
So I took that in 2015 and didn't pass it. I got, I think, a 73. 85 is passing.
How did that feel though? I mean, for someone that has high standards and is pretty meticulous in the work that you do, it's evident with all that you've created. What is that like to fail?
Well, I mean, I was stoked with the 73. That exam's
Me too.
Absolutely brutal. I mean, at the time there was 12 people in the world that held the certificate. And there'd been, 200 or 300 that have taken it. So the pass rate was really low.
Yeah.
And so I was stoked just to have the opportunity to sit for it and study for it.
Yeah.
Because the way I work, I'm motivated by time crunches, and that
too.
test was helpful to be like, okay, I know I can study now. So I learned a lot just through the process. It's a 2-day, I wrote handwritten probably 60 pages between the 2 days. Yeah. And, there was a lot of one-on-one like this where you're talking about beer. And I wasn't surprised when I didn't pass, is what I should say, but it was a cool opportunity. And then right while I was taking that, they were introducing a new level called Advanced Cicerone, which is now the 3 out of 4. And so I ended up going back in 2018 and taking the Advanced.
So that's like right between so there's
certified Cicerone and master. So it's right in between. Cool. Certified advanced master. And it's essentially the same as the master exam, but it's 1 day instead of 2. And then it's an 80% pass instead of an 85.
Yeah.
So it's really the same knowledge you need to know. You just needed to know it slightly less, degree, in 80% instead of an 85 pass. And then there's just a little less it's less brutal because it's 1 day.
Yeah,
it's still brutal, but it's so I end up the exams in Chicago. I flew out to Chicago and took that in 2018 and passed it. And that was when Kim, shortly after we got the results back for that, Kim was like, so we starting a brewery now? And so, it was like, I think that was what Kim needed to feel comfortable, because I, from the beginning, was like, I can make it work. I'm pretty scrappy and like, let's just do it. And then it's like, she was like, okay, now there's like, we have this solid education, we have good experience. And then financially we are at a better spot where we get big money from the bank. So
tell me about that. So you now have this education. You have your wife's approval. She's like, you've gotten the certification. You're good to go. She felt more comfortable in saying, like, putting her her weight behind it as well, right?
100%.
So tell me about like this whole experience. Had you ever gone to the bank to get a business loan? Tell me about this.
We had bought in a house, so we did please. We'd done a mortgage there, but very much different when you have to go in and pitch a business plan. And talking about Kim really quick, my wife Kim, she, meanwhile, as I'm doing beer distribution, she is working for People's Bank here in town and in finance. So she at that time was a certified financial planner. Yep. Or nope, that's not right. She never got her CFP, but she's a financial advisor for them. Okay. Yep. So she's getting really a lot of the banking experience and a lot of business admin experience there. And so it was nice when we started looking at loans. She knew the ins and outs of banks a bit and knew like, okay, which banks are we going to talk to? And with a business loan like ours, really we're looking for a small business association loan, SBA loan. And there's really only certain banks in town that do it. And then you've got to have a bank that has a high risk tolerance. And even with our relationships with People's, they don't touch new businesses. It's just not what they do. So we ended up going to another bank locally and And yeah, we ended up, I mean, we talked with a handful of people, but really seriously just with one bank. And
Yeah.
luckily they were able to finance us. And it was interesting because at every bank we talked to, their question was always, what other production brewing experience do you have? And I was an avid home brewer, and I homebrewed a ton. And then I did beer sales, but I never commercially brewed. I do think it was helpful. I worked on cars as a kid, and my dad was a mechanic. So I do think that piece, they looked at and were like, he's a mechanical, at least he's got that mindset. But yeah, that was always a rebuttal I had to kind of come across. Like, I don't have brewing experience, but let's talk about the business experience, and let's talk about how I'm going to run a successful business. Because like we mentioned earlier, I think that at the end of the day matters more. I think how you approach running a business and how you work the finances, allows you to make the good beer, because you can make amazing beer. And if you can't brand it and can't sell it, unfortunately it's not going to work.
It's like the two Venn diagrams that have to cross.
Yep.
Yeah. At this point you are 27. Is that right?
28.
28.
Right. Oh, that was 2018. Yeah. 28.
So you made this decision, Kim gives you the, hey, we're doing this. She had the experience on the financial side of it. You go and you have a gap because you don't have any experience opening a business, which is always such a funny, like weird spin, right? Because how are you supposed to get experience? It's like, what's on your resume? Or like, well, I don't have it yet, but here's how I'm going to do this. And like, I'm betting on me, and here's the systems I have in place, and here's what I'm going to do. How do you project that in a moment like that? When someone's like, what's your experience? How do you overcome that type of question?
We were able to just talk about experience in the distribution world, and had the opportunity there after sales rolled into more of an operations role, where I was doing some hiring and I was seeing the back end business side. So I was able to talk about that and managing people, and then also training. I think going through Cicerone and then training the sales staff at Dickerson, that was really good, like resume builder for that. And proving that, hey, I can train a team and we can get people to these results. And then I have a finance degree, and I love the numbers and I love Excel. And I do like to think the business plan and how well presented it was helped, at least on the financing piece, because I was told they were shocked with how thorough the plan was, which personally...
Was it the cat on the front?
Yeah, there was a cat.
One page with a cat?
That's right. That's all it was.
We get it. Yeah.
No, I mean, there's like 30 pages of Excel financials, which I personally thought it could have been a lot better. The bank was still shocked that a lot of people don't have that to show. So I think it showed that we were thinking about it and ready for it.
A lot of care and intention in that.
Yeah.
The majority of where I drink your product is at your establishment. And you probably have a really great group of regulars.
Absolutely.
And then you've got these like food trucks, which we'll get into that part too, which is really cool. Tell me a little bit more about like, what was your plan for, okay, we're going to do X percentage in distribution and X percentage actually at the brewery.
So the original business plan, it starts out with most of it in-house. The first, 6 months, it's near 100% in-house. And then, as we worked out year 2, year 3, it starts kind of flipping where, you're about 40-50% in-house. And then, 50-60% distribution. And we're roughly at that, like 40% in-house, 60% distribution right now.
Is that a good, comfortable place to be, do you think? Or is there still a push to be different?
So, ratio? I mean, as we grow, the growth is going to be in distribution.
Yeah.
We do have some opportunity to grow in our tap room, and we still are. And right now, parking's an issue that we're trying to resolve a little bit. And so we do have sort of a finite amount of people and space in that space. And though we still can grow it, we're getting close to that kind of max. And then, so if we want to keep volume moving, if we want to keep growing, it's going to go into distribution. The dollars are best when we sell it over our own counter. And it's really best for the brand too, because we have an opportunity to talk about it and be there. And so we always want to sell as much as we can in-house. But then the model we do have is we do love distribution, and we do find it's a really good branding opportunity too. Right now we're just in Whatcom County, Whatcom, Skagit, San Juan, Island County. So still with everything sold within 50-60 miles of here. We've noticed the more we're in the grocery store and the more we're in the bar down the street, the more people are coming to our tap room, because they go, what's Stemma? Like, even, we still run into people like, I didn't even know you were here. It's like 3 years, where you been?
My sign is like on the side of the freeway, dude. We put this up here so you can see us.
But I mean, people have their rhythms. And so I think if we get into their favorite bar, and then they're like, maybe I should go check out their brewery. And so we do think that's a really good branding opportunity too. And then as we grow, we're done a little bit into Seattle, and we're going to probably grow into Seattle a bit.
So now being on this side, I've seen your van, your Sprinter.
Yeah.
And do you have multiple?
No,
just the one.
Yeah, it's my car. So
it's your car.
Yeah, you're seeing it all over. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably sleep in there too after you distribute all your beer.
Yeah.
Are you doing a lot of your local distribution right now? Or
No.
have you just handed that off to a company like a Dickerson?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've handed it all off to Dickerson.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I don't know. A lot of breweries end up going self-distributed. The laws allow it where you can distribute your own. And I think as a small brewery, it's a good way to get going, especially if it's like, this bar wants me, I'll just roll a keg down there.
Yeah.
And because of the relationships we had, it was like, hey, I've got 11 of my best friends selling beer for a local company. Like, why wouldn't I go that route?
Yeah.
And so I think right away, like our numbers with them, I mean, we hit a point where most breweries would hit in like 5 years in distribution. And we hit that within like a year. And that's purely just based on relationships. I think you could do it too, but I mean, it was made it a lot easier that we just had those relationships and we're a local brand and all those things really worked in our favor. But that was a no-brainer to have them do it. You pay for that service, but at the end of the day, they're doing a really good job. So
what they've done is they've created this widespread audience, right? Yep. And it's just like any other types of advertising where you realize that a Joe Rogan, which we're number 2 right behind Joe Rogan, by the way.
Yes.
But like somebody would go to that person because of the audience, right?
Yep.
That's totally understandable. And you pay a price for that. And that's how that person makes money. And everybody shakes hands and hopefully that everything's equitable. And so that's really cool that that relationship was there and that fast tracked it.
Yeah, it made sense. I love making beer. I love running our tap room, but I don't want to be hitting the streets. And I think though it's an easy way to make a little extra money at the beginning, I do think it can take the focus away of running the business. And when you're, throwing kegs in your van and running them down the street a couple times a day or however you do it, I see a lot of self-distro models that way, and it can really pull your attention. So
it's interesting and it's really cool, fascinating to see that you like picked up on that really quickly. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to spend my time. I can tell you that I stumbled through how I wanted to spend my time until other people told me like, you're really good at this thing and you suck at these things. Don't do these things. You're fired. From this. Have you always been really clear on what you're good at, or have you just was it like an introspective moment, like once the business started?
I think I was better at it at the beginning, and I feel like I'm at a point I'm trying to refigure that out. I feel like I was really clear up front, like, okay, we're going to go this route and we're doing these things. And now 3 years in, I feel like I'm at a spot where I'm like, okay, there's stuff I need to give up and there's areas I'm involved in that I'm not good at. And so it's like figuring out, okay, who can I put in that role that will do better and the juggle. And then also ultimately, what do I want to be doing? Because I do think that's the one, nice thing about being an owner is you kind of have that opportunity to go, hey, what am I good at? And what do I enjoy doing? And let's do it. And so I'm still figuring that out. As we grow, I'm putting on a lot of hats that I can't always give away right away, but we're getting there.
So let's talk about that. What are you good at? If other people, like, let's say your wife, if she were to describe what your strengths are, what would those be?
Well, so that's, I'm an action person and can pretty much, like if I'm told, hey, you need to do X thing, I can figure out how to do it. I'm really good at troubleshooting, and I do end up doing a lot of like mechanical stuff because a lot of that is just troubleshooting. And if there's a problem, I can figure out how to fix it. It may take me a while to get there, but so that's one thing, like troubleshooting problems is a strong suit of mine. I am struggling right now with just people management. I think that's definitely not a strong suit. I don't have patience for it sometimes. So that's something we're trying to figure out how to give more of that away. And Kim's doing a lot of that, which is great. She's naturally better at it.
So you've had that conversation where you realize that you're like, this is not the part that I am good at.
Exactly. Yep. And so, I end up doing a lot of the project-based stuff. I think long-term, that's a lot of where I'll be. But then we're also, as we're growing, we're like, hey, we need to have someone that's really watching the books and watching the numbers. And I'm good at that as well. I don't enjoy it as much. And so it's like figuring out, okay, I need to be intentional about my time and that I'm focusing on that. But I don't know long-term. I'm at that crossroads right now where like, do I want to be more head brewery operations and really focus on that? Or do I want to roll more into where I'm hiring that out and I'm just running the business and more, CEO type. And we're kind of figuring that out still.
Okay. So let's just like rewind back to 2019.
Okay.
You're like, okay, in 9 months, a pandemic's going to hit. And we're going to start a business.
That's right.
The business plan is going to roll out.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, you talked about the overnight success quote, which I also love the tip of the iceberg
Yep.
metaphor, right? Let's talk about that time frame.
Yep.
The business plan is rolling. You've
Yep.
got all of these gears turning. You've got the approval. You've got your Cicerone.
Yeah.
Cicerone.
Yep. Advanced Cicerone.
That's the extent of my classiness right
Yeah,
there.
that's good.
I just showed my colors. No, but yeah, let's talk about that time period leading up to COVID. And I don't usually like to talk about COVID because we've talked about it.
Yep,
Beat
totally.
the dead horse, right?
Yep.
But it's a big part of your story.
Yep.
Take me through that.
Our business model, I don't know if it shifted. I mean, obviously in ways it had to shift during COVID, but it accelerated what we were already going to do. So, I mean, we didn't imagine going into 16-ounce cans until year like 2.
Yep.
And we did it at 9 months.
Yep.
We were focusing on our tap room in those early periods. Most of our distribution was in tap room. We were just starting to do local distribution, all kegs. And really, kegs are an easy way to sell beer. They're always kept cold. It's easy to distribute. It's easy to package, all those things. So that was really our focus. And that was our hey, we're going to do this for this next year. And then
you were doing the distribution of the kegs.
It was Dickerson. We signed with them right at the beginning. Cool. Pretty much right away. I'm trying to think if I did really any self-distro. I don't think so.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we weren't planning on canning until 2021 at the minimum. And then COVID hit. And so we just kind of took our business plan and we're like, okay, well, let's kind of bring everything and focus everything on retail and to go. And in ways, it caused us to grow faster than we were anticipating.
Mm-hmm.
And that growth, it's good. It wasn't necessarily the direction of growth we were planning, which always just takes a little bit to wrap your head around, but it was still, it allowed us to get into markets that we weren't planning on.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, it was just purely to survive. But then come June, July, things started opening up again. It's like, oh, okay, now we've got cans and draft is starting to come back and our tap room is open, outdoor only. And it's like, oh, okay, this is actually, it's another avenue of, money stream.
Yep.
In some ways, it helped us make that growth faster than we would have. But we still pretty much hit all our numbers on our business plan, which is sweet.
It turns out business plans help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to go back to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And use them as like an actual document instead of just putting them away. And
I'm going to throw something, adaptive intelligence.
Okay.
The whole concept of adaptive intelligence. Let's say you're a business and you're established for 10 years. Do you think this acceleration through COVID, because you guys were in this the starting phase and everything was adaptable.
Yep.
Everything had to be adaptable. Yep. Do you feel like not being in business for 10 years prior to COVID helped?
I do. I think and I don't know, I've talked to people that are like, oh man, that would be brutal to be brand new. And, so I think everyone kind of thinks it was easier on the other side. I personally think it was nice to be young because we were already, Kim and I were doing a bunch. We had a good bartending staff, but we didn't know what tomorrow was looking like. We were just rolling with the punches, we're building the brand. And so when everything changed, it's like, well, okay, we're already kind of in change mode and let's figure this out. And the other benefit there is we didn't have much admin overhead. It was Kim and I. We didn't have a marketing person. We didn't have a salesperson. And so we didn't have all these people that all of a sudden were like, oh, that's a lot of overhead. We were able to just be flexible.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a business is 10 years in, that cog is a lot more established and there's a lot more pieces where I think it's harder to all of a sudden just go down to almost nothing, which we were kind of at nothing already. So
it's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, totally. I think so. But then in ways, when you're more established, you might have a little more capital to, build off of and whatnot. But
when you have more capital, it also, and even more experience at that point, it also makes it easier. You don't have to pull on as many parts of your life to make an opportunity happen, to actualize an opportunity. But anyways, I love the whole concept of adaptive intelligence and just sometimes the newness of something, you're just there's nothing behind, I just have to go.
Yeah. One thing I think COVID did for businesses is it figured out which businesses could adapt and which ones were willing to change. Because, I think you saw businesses, beer or not, have been around 10, 15, 20 years. And you saw some that were adaptable and figured it out and were like, hey, I think of Mac and Jacks. They never once run cans. They're like, well, we're canning now. Yeah. It's no one would have thought they would have saw the day. But there was other examples of brands that were like, nope, we're just not changing. We're just going to, we're just going to shut down and we're going to ride it out.
We're going to go down with the ship.
Yeah, whether or not that worked or not long-term for them. But I think you really saw which businesses could figure it out. And I think ultimately it made those brands stronger. The older brands that could reinvent and refigure it out. I think they're probably stoked at the end of the day that they sort of were forced to make some moves, I think.
It's funny, just the throwback to smack middle of COVID when you and Gary and the guys over at the Brewingham, Dakota and Evan came on. We did the Pivot Show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is they're all in the middle of what they're already doing. Gary's starting up was at the time 122 West, and Dakota and Evan were like right in the middle of Brewingham.
Yeah.
And just so interesting that we're now having this conversation about like how you adapted, because that was like that moment.
Yeah, because I mean, when was that? Was that March? June?
Okay. Yeah, I think we did. I was doing an episode a day.
Yeah.
Live streamed on Facebook, and I was like, I even snapped my chair that I was in my home office, like, because I was leaning back on it. It got like
all the time.
Yeah, and it was an amazing experience, but I was really tired of talking about COVID by the end of that. Anyways, the whole point is that like I vividly remember our episode, which was that Zoom call live stream on Facebook, and we had just met. You had the Stemma flag behind you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, at that point, we were all just figuring it out because every day was a new adventure, and we were just trying to move beer best we could.
Let's talk about the horrible location this review
gave
you.
Totally. I like it.
Apparently, according to the anonymous review, which I'm calling you out on the radio. Well, we're not on the radio, but Derek. Hey, Derek, this is Leo with the Building Bellingham podcast, and I'm talking directly to you, Derek.
Hey,
Derek. I think you should go back, and on a sunny day, I'll even buy you a beer.
Totally.
And I think you should just go like sit and just expect that there's going to be freeway noise because it's conveniently located near everything. I think including the freeway.
Yeah, you should go to Harper Sales afterwards and then understand the beauty. Or like either way, you get a beer first, then shop at Harper Sales, or Harper Sales and then get a beer. So terrible location.
Let's talk about the terrible location. So you have this idea, things are happening. You're obviously looking for a space. You need a space for production and for a tap room.
It's interesting. So breweries are considered light industrial businesses. Also something else. I'm gonna deliver delay. I think. Yep. So we're considered a light industrial business. That'll be good.
Have you heard of this one before?
Yeah. Can you explain it to me?
No. It's a beer.
We're drinking citrus single hop.
It's a beer.
Part of
citrus single hop.
Rotating single hop series.
By the way, whoever did all of your design for your cans, I love the branding. It's so like this like retro, like Miami kind of
so
80s.
One thing I've learned recently, and anyone listening that knows art's gonna laugh that I just recently realized this, but it's called, I think, Bauhaus. It's a German. I might be saying that way wrong. But it's under like the style of Bauhaus. It's this very geometric line art. And we have some art in the brewery that's similar. And when we got into canning, Blind Tiger Designs helped us out. And then we now have an in-house branding guy that's been doing awesome. And we love it. We feel like the cans just got to be bright and fun. And
it's got a lot of energy to it. And I know like every time I walk in, all of the different colors are like, it definitely is an uplifting energy. It's like uplifting and energetic.
It's bright.
Yeah.
Bright. We have a white ceiling, which might be the only brewery in town.
Yeah. But might I remind that all of this bright, fun, energetic vibes is in a bad location.
I like this. So let's talk about it. So bad location. So breweries we're light industrial businesses. Yep. And so we started initially just looking for buildings, really not knowing. We're brand new, never started a business. And we're like, we looked at this building on DuPont Street and we were seriously considering it. Like, hey, this is a perfect building. Used to have, a manufacturing business in it. Had roll-up doors. It has all these things. We're looking for, tall ceilings, roll-up doors. We're looking for a natural front of house. We're making sure bathrooms make sense. We're all these considerations. And so we end up putting an intent to lease down on the space. And then I'm like, okay, I better go chat with the city and just figure out with them. And that's when I really was alerted that, hey, you're a light industrial business. Here's our zoning maps. And they go, that space is not zoned for light industrial. I'm like, but it was an industrial building for 20 years. Like, well, it used to be zoned properly.
Oh, transition zoning?
Yep. So zoning changes. Mm-hmm. It's now zoned as office. You can do an office area. You could do multifamily. I'm like, okay, well, the building's meant to be industrial. I'm like, well, since it closed, like had that business kept operating, they could operate as long as they want. Yeah. As soon as it closes, you open a new business there, it has to comply. Theoretically, we could do a brewery there. Yep. It wouldn't be conditional use. It'd be called unconforming use.
Unconforming, yeah.
Which I think I'm saying that right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is even more difficult. Yeah.
Semantics.
Yeah. Non-conforming. So we're like, okay, what does that look like? And then they explain the process. I mean, even in the best case scenario, it was going to be a 6-month process and it was going to be, talking with all the neighbors, and it was going to be holding public meetings on like, hey, are you cool with a brewery here in this location? Ultimately, us and the landlord decided that we weren't going to go that route. So that's when we opened up the planning map and we're like, okay, here's what we're doing. Here's where we can be. Yeah. And that puts us into these pockets of industrial there in Bellingham. We are lucky in the fact that we still have some mixed industrial locations that are more or less in neighborhoods, which, I think some neighborhoods haven't been stoked about that because we're popping up in these neighborhood areas and bringing in a lot of people that most industrial businesses don't.
Right.
And that's where we're a little different. So we can also have a tap room. So,
right.
But yes, we started looking at the map. And so I knew very well everywhere in Bellingham that could or couldn't have our use type. Yep. And we had a real estate agent as well. But the space we ended up finding is less than a mile from my house. And I drove by it almost every day. I drive by one day and, man, that's a cool location. That's zoned right. I'm always looking. Yeah. One day I drive by, no sign. Next day I drive by and there's a sign that says like for lease. I'm like, to call my agent and he's like, it's not even listed yet. It's not on the market. So we were able to jump on really fast and look at it. And yeah, it was funny because I live so close. I'm like, as we're talking and figuring out like, go by it multiple times a day. And I go back by at night and sit in my car and listen to the freeway noise. I'm like, is that going to be a problem or does it become white noise? And then I'm looking at the traffic. I mean, you think you're like, oh, it's kind of like it's off Iowa and it's like a side street. But then you realize how much traffic comes right off the freeway, goes right under and then goes either neighborhoods or businesses. Holy smokes, there's hundreds and hundreds of cars passing by every hour. This is pretty sweet, actually, for visibility's sake. So just don't.
By the way, who is your real estate agent?
Kirby Jones.
Kirby Jones. Huge shout out to Kirby Jones.
Yeah, I know.
For that space.
He's
locking it down.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's moved now, but he was local and real estate agent for a long time.
It's part of the process. All these people that came together to make this
100%.
All these different facets happen.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, talking about that. So Juxt Tap House.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Randy or have talked with him, but we were closely intertwined with Juxt. Juxt also used Kirby as real estate agent. And that's how I found Kirby, was through Randy. And so it's cool. Like we were all intertwined as they were starting their thing. We were starting ours and utilizing resources together and stuff.
And Juxt is an awesome space downtown and repurposing the old teriyaki drive-through. And that's when I got to Bellingham, was when it was a teriyaki drive-through.
Absolutely.
Great spot for food. And,
and it's gorgeous in there.
Taps and
it's probably the best design in town.
Yeah, go see Justin over at Juxt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, you get the space. And did you have a vision of having food trucks?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, huge props to Colshan in town for really paving the way there.
Seriously.
I mean, it wasn't a new concept, but it was new to Bellingham. They were looking at places like Bend and other big cities that had already done that. But then at the time when Colshan opened, 2012, the only models were brew pub models. And so they opened and people were like, where do I order my food? And now I got to order outside. And then do they bring it to me? Do they not? By the time we opened 8 years later, everyone knew. No, there's no questions. It's just like, oh yeah, cool. You got a food truck here. What truck is it? Okay, I get it. I order here for my food. I order here for my beer. And we love it. Food industry is a hard industry. And I don't want to be in it.
Yeah.
I really love beer and I love people. And so we'll do that.
And there's a line in the sand. I want to be really clear that a lot of the times the service industry gets lumped together.
Yep.
And it is all part of one kind of umbrella.
Yep.
But you just drew a line in the sand between the food and beverage.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't really heard a lot of people split those apart. I know that they're separate. I know they're different and they operate differently. Tell me a little bit more about like why you have respect for the people that do the restaurant, but why you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different business model. And really our space and the way we set it up, we think more of ourselves as like a coffee shop. We're the afternoon, evening coffee shop. We want to be a place where people can walk in. No one's going to come and go, hey, what do you want? There could be someone sitting at a table for 4 hours. We never once are going to we won't even notice probably they don't have a drink. You know what I mean? Like we might go and chat with them, but we're not going to be like, oh.
They have free Wi-Fi. If you've seen, the big thing these days is free Wi-Fi.
Fresh beer.
Stemma has free
all
Wi-Fi
lowercase,
and
one
fresh
word.
beer.
No, fresh beer is the password for the Wi-Fi.
Oh, fresh beer is the password. Oh, I thought you were going to say. Well, they do have fresh beer too.
Yeah. We think of ourselves as this sort of come in, you're ready to order beer, come up to the counter, you can order a beer, you can come sit down, you can meet friends, you can bring in outside food, which we love, especially with cater towards family. We love families. And so sometimes you're just going to make a PB&J for your kid and yourself, and you want to just go get a beer and sit down. Whereas, it's a different experience at a restaurant. You can't do that. And there's obviously really good things about restaurants.
Right.
And so, but they're just a different feeling. And then food trucks on site. I mean, that allows that perfect both worlds where they can have outside customers that don't even buy beer from us, and they're on the corner there and people can just come buy from them. But then they're also, have a captive audience of people drinking beer, and they can go out and
it's a really good collaborative win-win, right? It's really cool because they provide something that you don't provide, but you don't want to do. And they do it well. And you can focus on your skill set. And
I would argue in those scenarios, both companies are better off and are more profitable
versus
doing it together. Because they can just focus on what they're good at, and they can just, hey, this is my little thing and I'm going to be really good at it. Here's my thing and I'm going to be good at it. And sometimes, models just get too complicated. And so outsourcing, it's really nice.
It's like that whole concept of mile deep, inch wide versus mile wide, inch deep, right? You're like, you don't need to do everything you can do, but you want to do this thing really well. And they want to do this thing really well. And you can do those things. Those two holes in the ground can be right next to each other, right?
100%.
Let's pivot a little bit to the space you talked about.
Can we just not use the word pivot anymore? Can we
pivot?
Can we over?
Actually,
that was a 2020 term that we were okay, so we're pivoting.
No, we're not pivoting.
We're moving on to.
I don't know. What do you want to use instead of pivot?
Oh man, we're transitioning. We could. I'm still healing. Yeah,
we're moving.
That's fine.
We're just like
we're moving
direction.
on.
Yeah, we're redirecting. That's a very corporate buzzword that I feel very safe with.
Okay, so we're redirecting.
We're gonna use safe words. So at the time that you were just kind of like planning out exactly how you wanted to be like a coffee shop. You wanted people to come in and be able to bring their family. That's always the big question is like, do I make this like 21 plus, and do I have this only be for people that want to have it can be loud, but it's like because of a bunch of like adults are being loud, not because kids are being loud. And you had kids. Was that part of like your process of like, did you say, you know what, I'm okay missing out on the people that like only want to go to a place that has beer and they only want to be around adults? Like tell me about that process.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's interesting. Even early on when I wrote the original business plan as a 21-year-old, it still was intended to be family friendly. But I think we doubled down on that as, we started with a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old basically is when we started. And so we were right in like early parenthood. And so we were really intentional about changing tables in the bathrooms and open floor plans and just being really friendly to that. But yeah, there's pros and cons. I would argue that right now, at least the demographic of Bellingham, you have a ton of young families. And so I think that's been really beneficial to us. And we're getting a lot of people that are in that life stage that are loving an opportunity to come in and bring the whole family. One thing, I love about breweries that make it a lot different than a bar is that one, we, can have kids. You can choose to be 21 and up, but the license type allows you to have kids if you want to. And so then that changes. It's no longer like, hey, I'm just coming to meet my buddies. And, sometimes bars get the bad rep, but you're just coming to get drunk. It's like, no.
And there's less pickup lines at breweries.
Yes.
Yeah. Less cheesy pickup lines.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You're not going to get that. Yeah. When you're like, it's a lot more just family friendly environment. And we like that. So people can just come in and just relax and get a day beer and don't feel like they're, an alcoholic sitting at a bar in a dark, dingy bar. Yeah. Again, that coffee shop vibe. We have the bright feel, big windows. We want people to just feel comfortable and hang out.
And you can drink multiple.
You can have multiple.
Yeah, you can have multiple. We'll allow it. Yeah, even totally. You, Derek, you can have multiple.
You can have as many as you want.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay.
Well, not as many. Yeah. We got to watch. That's right. 1 beer an hour.
Well, you don't know, Derek, if he has more than 1 beer, he might enjoy the location more with more beers.
Maybe. Yeah. Might not hear the freeway noises.
His graph could actually change as he has more beers, as like the location matters less to him.
I hope Derek like listens to this, but doesn't catch the part when we mention him. Like he just is like later, like, who's this Derek they're talking about? My name's Derek, but are you talking about me? Which Derek?
Yeah, which Derek? Yeah, there's only one Derek that we're specifically talking about. So, okay, let's talk about the relationship with the food trucks. Did you know all the folks before? Or
yeah. So since we've opened, we've had a couple different trucks.
Yeah. Shout out to Sweet as Waffles.
Yes, absolutely.
Insane.
The best.
And tell me about the new the Mexican food truck that came in.
So
delicious.
Alejandra is who's running that truck.
Yeah.
And that was a cool opportunity. She was working at our previous Mexican truck and she wanted to start her own thing.
Yeah.
And she had an opportunity to buy a truck and her son got involved to help her. And it was just a cool opportunity. It was already the person we were working with and we were able to kind of support her in that. And she's making awesome food.
Yeah. So good.
and she's doing, just some things that are different that you don't see at trucks. And we talked today, and she's going to have a special with like this wet burrito. It's like basically enchilada burrito. It looks amazing.
Sounds horrible.
So
no, I'm just kidding. It sounds amazing.
That's right. Oh yeah. You can't have
no, I can't. No, corn tortillas.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. You do corn.
And she has something my wife got. And my wife at this point was like 6 months pregnant and very happy.
Yeah.
It was like, I think it was like a quesadilla, but it had like
quesadillas. I can't say. I can't roll my R.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So it's like
go get one of those.
It's quesadilla del Burrias.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're it's a pulled beef that's like melted cheese, and you dip it in this what is the consomme? Like beef broth. It's awesome.
Go get
just
go
get it. Yeah.
Beer.
Yeah. So we have right now it's Sweet as Waffles, and then Tepos Teco. Tacos del Tepos Teco.
Yes. Awesome food. Sweet as Waffles. How did you meet them?
They were kind of friends of one of our beer tenders, and we started seeing them post on Instagram as they were building out. And so they met with us. We met a couple months before they were ready, and said, hey, we're looking for a permanent spot, and could this be the right fit? One thing that we from day one wanted and looked for was a permanent truck. So we've never done the rotating model. I think it's great, but it's a ton of management, and it's, as a new brewery, it's kind of hard to get in. There's X amount of trucks, and a lot of the trucks right now, the good ones, at least when we opened, they all had the rotation. And so I started emailing some of them and just nothing, because they all were like, man, we're good, And so then we're like, okay, maybe a permanent. And so working with a truck that's just there 6-7 days a week, it's pretty sweet all around.
And they're delicious.
Yep.
The savory and sweet. I've had both. And my lovely pregnant wife also really enjoys Sweet as Waffles.
I bet.
And the cool part
is kids, they love it every time. Yeah, we can't go there without it.
And they have gluten-free waffles.
Yeah, I haven't had those.
And you get a little dinosaur on top.
Yeah, the dinosaur is a good touch.
So and the cool part is you could do a sweet and savory waffle, or you can go eat Mexican food and then have a sweet waffle.
Yep.
So it's a good combo. Very interesting, but cool blend.
Yep. Or if you're there, like what we often do is, we get our kids a kids quesadilla, and we get tacos, and then we get a savory sweet waffle that the kids share at the end.
Some dillas and some tacos. Yep. Yeah, I love it. Let's talk about the thing that not COVID. I'm just going to let everyone know that we're not pivoting.
We're going to pivot back to COVID.
We're going to pivot into a COVID pivot. COVID. Let's talk a little bit about social media. It goes back to the first thing we talked about, which was the branding part, which I'm really fascinated with. How, like, growing an audience, we all want to have that in-person experience. I think that's the most important part. But the part of the in-person experience is drawing people in, like with what you represent. How did you build that social media following 6,500 people on Earth?
Yeah. Sometimes we look at that number and in ways like we're stoked by that, because it's obviously, we started at 1. So it's like, And then other ways we look at other breweries and we're like, oh man, how can we get to that next level? How can we get to 10,000 or 15,000? But one thing I'm really happy about is the 6,500 followers that we do have are mostly local and they're really engaged. Yeah. And so, the interesting thing about social media is it's instant gratification. We'll put 11 o'clock, tapping new beer today, delivery delay IPA, come and get it. And 11:10, someone's like, hey, I hear you got a new beer today. Yeah. Like they were like already on their way or whatever. They live across the street and they're like, new beer today. I'm going to go check it out. So it's amazing how engaged you can get people on social media. When we started seeing that and how like instant from like, hey, we got something new to people buying it or showing up to be there to be part of it, we really started doubling down and focusing more on it. And, it can be a challenge it's a lot of work to run, but we try to put out some fun content, and we mix too, like we're talking about new products we're doing and try to take some really sweet photos. And Alex Powell does all that for us. And he's absolutely amazing. We also try to mix in like just what's going on in the community. And we try to shout out our regulars that are awesome. We have a beer club that we try to feature on our socials when we can. And it's a cool platform to just communicate what's going on.
You see a lot of local businesses here in Bellingham do it really, really well. Show authentically who they are. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that line of being like, once you grow to like, there's like on one side of the line, let's say on the left side of the line, there's fluff. Yep. And on the right side of the line, there's like really raw, authentic stuff. So like, how do you find that like middle of the spectrum of like, hey, we don't want to tell people like how today was an awful day.
Yeah, totally.
but like, this is my real day.
Yep. Yeah, there's interesting. I think every business finds their own like sort of where they fit into that. And I think they gain people because of who they are, you know, and I think we kind of play in the middle. I think in general, we tend to be pretty focused on what we're doing and what we're making, but then we try to, you know, shout out to our staff and shout out to our customers. We won't necessarily post some of the nitty gritty of like, you know, this happened to us, and versus other businesses, I think do that. And it is awesome. Like you can feel that raw emotion and really, I think that helps draw people to you.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, our long-term vision is trying to make this brand that is, you know, localized, but then also, you know, we're growing a bit. And so we're trying to be pretty consistent with just brand image and everything on social media. And we're trying to we always talk as like Stemma. And it's like us. And so you can't tell. I mean, at any given point, I could have posted it. Alex could have posted it. My wife could have posted it over our 30 years. Most of everything now is Alex. You know, it's going to transition. My wife's going to be doing a lot more of it coming forward, but we still try to have a voice, and we talk about that. We go like, hey, how did this sound? Should we reword so it all kind of sounds the same?
Mm-hmm.
So we often won't necessarily speak as like, hey, Jason's saying this.
Right.
We have, you know, if we're like shouting out to staff or something, we'll maybe talk more personal. But
so you talk about future vision, and in 3 years, about 3 years,
celebrated 3 years in June.
You had a 3-year anniversary in June. Well, you know what? I'm going to have a little bit more of this. We're going to cheers to 3 years.
3 years.
Cheers to 3 years. Wow.
Cheers,
man.
For us.
Yeah. So 3 years. A lot's happened in 3 years. Things have exponentially grown.
Yep.
Things have caught momentum, and we've talked a lot about like how that all happened. But you know, going forward for you, what are some of the big things that you want to accomplish? What do you want to see happen with your brand?
I wish I had this like great answer, and I hope someday I will, but we're right in that point of where we're figuring that out. Right now, Kim and I are meeting way more than we have been and just talking about the business and what do we want it to be and where do we want it to go? Because our original business plan was 3 years, and we've hit it, and we're really happy with that. And now we're like, okay, now what does the next 3 to 5 years look like? And so it's still, we're still figuring that out. But a couple things I can tell you. So quality beer is always the number one thing I talk about. And so that's like any growth we make, as long as quality doesn't get affected, then I'm happy with it. We got to make sure we're still making the best beer possible as we grow and not sacrificing that. And so that's something I'm keeping a pulse on. And then we are growing. So we signed a lease recently on the space directly same side of the road, still on the freeway, terrible location. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, where cable comm
was. It a worse location?
Probably. It's on worse. Iowa.
Yeah.
But it flooded. It flooded last year. So we're taking over a flooded, but that was, you know, I'm a statistics guy. Yeah. So that was a 30-year flood. Well,
was it 30?
30. That was the
worst
flood.
I'm a sales guy is because I said it was a 500-year flood.
Oh yeah, 500.
Yeah. Got a doom and gloom.
Sure, I'll take it if it never floods again in my lifetime. But so we're taking over the space next door, which you know, somewhat fell into our lap, and it was an opportunity of, hey, we can grow our existing business exactly where we're at. And so our goals there is increase parking, increase some outdoor seating, increase beer production.
Whole spot behind the gate.
Yeah. So my
truck would love that.
Yes. So we're looking. We'll add at least 30 parking spots over the next 6 months, which by the time this puts out, we'll probably already have some.
Yep.
We're going to triple our warehouse space. So we're still trying to figure out how to utilize that. We're buying a used canning line as of today. We put a deposit on a canning line, so we'll have that in-house.
Yep. And
yeah, so we're just making those incremental steps to increase the brand and increase our space and make it more comfortable and quality at the forefront.
I love it. Big question. There's other people out there that have ideas and good ideas probably, and maybe don't have experience, or maybe they lack something. Everyone lacks something. Yep. You can't not lack something.
Yep.
What kind of advice would you give to the person that's like, hey, I've got this idea. I know business plan is probably going to be a part of it.
Yeah.
But what would you like? What's your, entrepreneur to future entrepreneur advice?
Figure out what you don't know. Try to figure out what you don't know. Because I mean, that's what catches people off guard, especially if it's an industry that you're not fully wrapped up in. You just don't know what there is to know. So I think that's one area where working in the industry for as long as I did was really helpful, as I figured out, what there was to know and what I don't know. And there's still, I'm figuring out, like, didn't realize that was zoning, right? Yep. Didn't even realize that was a thing. I wish I would have had more guidance on that. But so I think that would be it. Just try to do as much research in the subject as you can and ask the questions of, like, meet with business owners and go, what caught you off guard? Where did you fail early on? And we did that too. And that was helpful. We met with a good dozen business owners over a couple week period, right as we were launching our business, of like, hey, give us your advice. What would you have done better? What would you have done differently?
Surprisingly, it comes really easy. Like, oh God, there's one problem.
Yeah, totally.
This other
Let
problem.
me tell you about how.
Yeah.
I mean, people are pretty easy to tell you how they screwed up, and you'll make a bunch of different mistakes, but I think as much as you can figure that out early on, and then just, I don't know, go for it. I strongly believe in business, you got to go all in. I think I see some businesses where I'm like, man, if only that person would get rid of their other day job and just focus on what they're doing. I think you just got to go for it, because I think it shows sometimes when it's like, oh, this is like really sweet, but you can tell he's still doing 10 other things over here. And it's just like, do what you want to do and do it well.
Yeah. It's simple. But it's hard. It ain't easy. I didn't want to say it. I said pivot. Simple, not easy.
Simple.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to throw something out here, because I don't know if it's just my mom listening to this.
My mom's going to listen to it.
Let's go. What's your mom's name?
Allison.
She
always is one of the first. Like, I'll won't even know something gets published. But like, I just heard you on the podcast and you were so good.
Like, how'd you?
I'm like, oh, thank you, Mom.
She's on Stitcher or something.
Totally.
Like, I don't even know how to get to Stitcher.
Yeah, she always lets me know it. So she'll let me know when this gets published.
Cool.
Because she'll listen to it first.
And I think my parents will also let me know. But if there are other people, which I do believe they're out there, I've met some of them randomly out on the town. If you listen to this and you message the Building Bellingham podcast and you mention the episode, like, hey, I love the episode, I'll buy you a beer.
Sweet.
At Stemma.
Okay, Tiffany here with some terms and conditions. This episode dropped on October 21, 2022, so we'll honor this offer for the first 3 months this episode is out there in the world, until January 21, 2023.
That's awesome.
So if you're listening, Mom, you can have more than a half beer.
Yes.
No, but actually I will do that. So
full
message
pint.
our Instagram, the Building Bellingham Instagram.
Sounds good.
Sound good?
We'll get him beer.
Cool. Jason.
That's easy.
Dude, thanks for coming and joining us. And we have a little bit left to finish here.
We got it.
If we need to call you an Uber, we'll call you an Uber.
Everyone can have
or you can sleep in your van out there, which is fine.
I got space.
I won't call Johnson's on you out there. But thank you so much for joining us. And,
absolutely.
And sitting down. And this is episode 2 of season 4. I always have to look at Tiffany because I don't even know. We're just going.
That's awesome. I love it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate you, man. And we appreciate all that you do for our community. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Building Bellingham is a community podcast exploring leadership, challenges, failure, and mindset with entrepreneurs right here in Whatcom County, Washington. You can be the first to hear about upcoming guests by subscribing to the Building Bellingham Facebook or Instagram pages, as well as the Building Bellingham YouTube channel. This episode was produced and edited by Tiffany Holden. Our videography is done by Cooper Hansley. Community projects are by Taylor Beal. To learn more about the team behind the podcast and to download our media kit, check out our website at www.livebellinghamnow.com or search Cohen Group NW on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn. From the whole Building Bellingham podcast team, thank you for listening.